very good morning to each and everyone, and welcome to first of all, the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, members of the InvesTT of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as members of the media and the public. I am Dr. Tim Gopi Singh. I'm the Vice Chair of this committee. Senator Mark, who is the chair, is a bit delayed, and he has asked me, and with the concurrence of the members, to chair the committee. Can I ask for introduction from my colleagues, starting from Senator Deonarine?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Rita Deonarine, member.
Good morning. Foster Cummings, member.
Good morning. Leanne Gaspadoli, member.
Fitzgerald Hines, member.
Thank you. Investments Division.
Good morning. Michelle Durham-Kisoon, Acting PS in the Ministry of Finance. Good morning.
Good morning. Chintamani Suku, Acting Director.
Good morning. Sita Bidesi, Acting Business Analyst.
The Ministry of Trade
Ministry
and
of
Industry.
Finance.
Good morning. Frances Signori, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Good morning. Colleen Roach, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Good morning. Randall Karam, the Director of Policy and Strategy.
Good morning. Vidish Maharaj, Acting Senior Economist.
Good morning. Dennis Scott, Senior Business Analyst.
Good morning. Chris Mohammed, Manager Procurement E-Tech.
Good morning. Hayden Alfred, Manager Financial Performance E-Tech.
Good morning. Nishal Nagesa, Manager of Research and Business Intelligence at InvesTT.
Good morning. Sekou Allen, Manager Investments, InvesTT.
Good morning. Sheila Henry Gibson, Manager Marketing and Communications at InvesTT.
Good morning. Christopher Lewis, President, InvesTT.
Good morning. Philip Nags, Chairman, InvesTT.
Good morning. Jared Noel, InvesTT Director.
Good morning. Trisha Beckles, Director, InvesTT. Good morning. Stacey Adams, Vice President, Investor Services at InvesTT.
A special welcome to all of you. This committee, the Public Accounts Enterprise Committee, has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements. And in addition, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. And so the purpose of this meeting this morning of the Public Accounts Enterprise Committee is to examine the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the InvesTT, Trinidad and Tobago, for the financial years 2014 to 2017. The committee is desirous of hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders at the InvesTT Trinidad and Tobago in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. And the role of this committee is to help the InvesTT Trinidad and Tobago improve the delivery of services, if we can, in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. And the meeting is being held in public, as you realize, and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. and viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email parl101@ttparliament.org, at facebook.com@ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. So can I now ask for some short comments from the Investment Division of the Ministry of Finance? First of all, the Investments Division.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Good morning, members and colleagues. We at the Ministry of Finance are pleased to be here this morning to partake in this conversation on the accounts of InvesTT. We welcome any issues that need to be clarified, and we will try our best to provide assistance to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Permanent Secretary, would you be kind enough to consider making some opening remarks?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and pleasant good morning to you and the members, distinguished members of the committee. The Ministry of Trade and Industry is appreciative of this opportunity to be part of the deliberations of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. As the forum may be aware, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is mandated to expand non-energy exports, facilitate and attract investment, support the development of globally competitive businesses to contribute to the sustainable growth and diversification of the economy. InvesTT is a key part of the Ministry of Trade and Industry's work. In fact, the National Investment Promotion Agency is the implementer of investment promotion strategies of the government, including investor sourcing, investor facilitation, investor aftercare, very importantly, tenanting and marketing of the Tamarind Tech Park, the Muruga Processing and Light Industrial Park, and the new park that's being developed next year. InvesTT's responsibilities, therefore, are in unison with Theme 4 of Vision 2030, building globally competitive businesses aimed at creating a business environment that's conducive to entrepreneurship and a more attractive destination for investment and trade, among other goals. We are at the Ministry of Trade and Industry confident that the activities being pursued by InvesTT will contribute towards the goals identified in Vision 2030, and therefore we look forward to the recommendations coming out of this committee, because we are clear that these will serve to improve the operations of the state agency. Thank you, Chairman.
The President or Chairman of InvesTT. Chairman.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. We are very honored to have been invited today by your committee to report on the activities of InvesTT from fiscal 2014 to 2017. InvesTT is a national investment promotion agency of Trinidad and Tobago under the purview of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Our mandate is essentially to source and facilitate investments, as well as encouraging reinvestments. We target both foreign direct investment and local investments outside of the petrochemical area. We represent a small team of 19 professionals tasked with a rather large job of competing against a global landscape of countries doing their best to attract foreign investment into their markets. From a personal perspective, I have been appointed as a non-executive chairman in March of this year, approximately 3 months ago. I accept the challenge of this appointment and the opportunity that InvesTT will have to contribute to the economic development of Trinidad and Tobago. So, given the importance of this review, as well as the short nature of my tenure in a non-executive capacity, we have assembled a key team of company representatives that will assist us in providing clear answers to all of your very important questions. Over the period under review, October 2013 to September 2017, InvesTT has sourced or facilitated 16 investments valued at approximately 863 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars, creating 1,200 jobs in the process. This achievement was only possible through active and close collaboration with our line ministry, other ministries, and relevant agencies such as ETEC, Town and Country Planning Division, and the Immigration Division. We are particularly pleased to be able to present to you today the audited accounts for fiscal 2014 to 2017. If I may, I would like to advise the committee that the 2018 audited financial statements are complete and have been approved by the shareholder, and the extract of the statements are being reviewed by the external auditors before publication in the press. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have two members of this committee who have another engagement with another committee, which is for the first time meeting today. So first of all, may I ask Minister Fitzgerald Hines to lead off the discussions with you, with everyone, and we will move on from there. Minister Hines.
Thank you very warmly, Mr. Chairman. Let me too just congratulate and thank you, the members of the board of InvesTT. Having had a look at the profiles here, I'm satisfied that we have a very able and strong board to manage this organization. So I thank you for your service to the government and the people in that regard. I would like, for the benefit of our key stakeholder, the listeners, and the citizens of people of Trinidad and Tobago, to get some kind of comfort, some assurance from you, InvesTT, that the mandate that you have just described, which I consider to be the ought, how is that being realized? What comfort do you give us that this mandate is being carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago? I want that stated so we can understand with that as a backdrop going forward. InvesTT.
Sure. Thank you very much. Through the chair, I would like to reiterate that our mandate is to attract, facilitate, and source foreign direct investment from across the globe. And we do that in a lot of different fashions. It starts with our website. We have targeted attendance at foreign events where we're able to not only meet investors, but we're also able to see best practices, observe best practices in different markets to understand how people are handling their foreign direct investment policies and strategies, and also meet with the people that are the site selectors, so the people that are employed by companies to find homes for their various different enterprises and companies in nearshore, very often nearshore locations. So we have a lot of different strategies employed by InvesTT. I think the numbers are very good numbers. We also have local outreach programs. We have involvement with the local and regional chambers, and we have outreach programs within Trinidad and Tobago where we meet with the regional corporations. We've met with 8 regional corporations, working together with them to see what investment opportunities they see in their particular areas. If it pleases the chair, perhaps I would like the president to say a few words in this area. That's okay?
Thank you, President.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add, we are a small team. So it's approximately 18 or 19 of us. So what we are very strong on is emphasizing maximum utility of the resources available to us. So as our chairman referenced, the website is very important because as the port of first call, investors considering Trinidad and Tobago from abroad, they look at our website. They may not call, they may not visit, but they check to see what does Trinidad have to offer through the InvesTT website. So it's very important for us to keep that up-to-date and with relevant, up-to-date information that investors could at least make preliminary decisions.
Question, if I may, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. When did you establish this website and what sort of attraction, hits, has it had to date, roughly, since this is your main source of feedback?
What I can say is that the website has existed since the agency started in 2013, but it was revamped in around November 2017. And so what you're seeing now is more or less brand new. And in terms of hits, we get about 5,000 hits per month in terms of visits to the website.
That's impressive.
Yes. So it's very important for us. And as the chairman again also referenced in terms of the targeted overseas events, that is also important for an agency as small as InvesTT because that's what allows us to build a network. So for example, we recently had an investment roundtable targeting the tourism sector, which was held 2 months ago, and 4 hoteliers, international hoteliers, came at their own expense to Trinidad and Tobago, stayed at the Hyatt, paid their travel expenses. We just catered for them in terms of facilitation on the ground, but they came because we had contact with them previously through those networking opportunities and through the website. So that is what works for us, even though we're small and we have limited resources. We try to maximize those resources as best as we can.
To your credit, I have noticed, I think earlier today, I saw a report from the Ministry of Trade that InvesTT won some international award. I would like to understand, and let the citizens understand, from whom did you receive that and what is the context in which that was received? I think the chairman was the recipient of that on behalf of us. Could you tell us a little bit about that so we can understand your impact in the world?
Yes. That award was presented by an organization which has been in the investment promotion field for over 50 years. And the basis of the award is basically on terms of the quality of the facilitation of InvesTT, the investors, how responsive are we to their queries, how comprehensive is our website, how well do we follow up and update investors on their queries that they may have from time to time. So it was a reflection of the type of quality service we provide to the investment community. That was the main criteria for that.
That I take it is an annual award.
Yes, it is.
And that would have been the first time that you...
No, it's the third time actually.
It's the third time that you won it?
Yes, it was previously won in 2017, and the marketing manager may correct me, but I believe 2014 was the first time.
And how many countries participate in this assessment?
It's international, through the chair. It's an international award. So in terms of the IPAs in the region, we were one of 2 that received that award, which was Cindy in Costa Rica, as well as InvesTT.
P.S., this one is for you. This is a $10 million operation, not very significant, but significant in its impact and its mandate. But what systems do you have in place to ensure the efficiency and the proper oversight of InvesTT, important as it is for Trinidad and Tobago as PS, the financier?
Thank you, Member Minister Hines. The Ministry of Trade and Industry on an annual basis has to submit to other authorities the estimates of expenditure, and we do that internally, first by meeting with the various companies, and in this case InvesTT, to examine what their key elements in the development plan are. We look to ensure that that is in concert with the strategic plan of the ministry, which of course follows on the national development strategy. And we also try to ensure that the projects that are listed are in fact those that are clearly going to bring value ultimately to the taxpayer of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's on an annual basis when we, if you like, set the blueprint for the fiscal year ahead. And our project management unit, therefore, has a remit to keep in touch on a regular basis. In fact, on a monthly basis, there's a report that comes in to the project management unit as well as to the monitoring and evaluation unit. They also follow up on a regular basis with InvesTT to see that those targets, those issues identified and agreed to, are in fact moving forward. So we believe that we have the systems in place. There's a lot of engagement, communication as required, and we are therefore hopeful that this will lead to really tangible benefits and ultimately the goals that we really do want, and that is to increase investment, local as well as, very importantly, foreign direct investment.
So Chair, just one comment on another question. The reason why I asked that and wanted to get some feedback on that is because unfortunately, in our country, we have seen many a good thing with a good mandate lose its way. In some cases, state operations, state enterprises. So it is important that that oversight remain constantly in place to ensure that we get what we expect from this very worthwhile endeavor. The question then is, on a scale of 10, because I'm not unaware that when you have a trade mission or the politicians leave the jurisdiction and go elsewhere for any reason, some investment opportunities come out of that as opposed to, or as distinct from a direct approach to InvesTT through its website. On a scale of 10, what would you say, Mr. Chairman or Mr. President, is the attraction to foreign investment through InvesTT on a scale of 10, as opposed to politicians making contact out there and coming with the ideas, or say private trade missions and that sort of thing, on a scale of 10, just so that we can understand?
Through the chair, if I were to guesstimate, I would say about a 7. There's more we could do if we had the resources in terms of, for example, if we look at comparable IPAs, they may have offices in the USA or in England or in territories where they think there are possible strong sources of attraction of investment inwards into the territories. We cannot afford that based on our budget. So we have that limitation. So I would say there are some ways to go, but our approach is not to dwell on that, but to maximize what resources we do have. So I would say 7.
I'm gratified to know, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your selection for the top place in that investment assessment.
Thank you, Member.
Thank you very much, Minister Hines. Senator Deonarine.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again.
Just 1 minute. May I be Senator Cummings as the meeting together with Senator Minister Hines. So can we ask him to go first?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, colleague.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Senator Deonarine.
Just have a couple of questions. Based on your submission, this is to InvesTT. You indicated that there was some engagements with potential investors in China, Dominican Republic, Korea, the US, and Venezuela. Can you give us an indication of what sort of fruit came from those interactions?
If I may inquire through the chair, what year specifically are we referring to? Okay. In terms of the China, if I may, through the chair, that was a national effort that was coordinated with our line ministry as well to visit China, and there was an expo at the same time. In terms of results coming out of it, there were some leads, there were some contacts made, but no hard investments were derived from those initiatives. But sometimes those initiatives are necessary in order to spread the word, because remember, as a new agency formed in 2013, nobody knows about InvesTT. People may not even know that much about the country, Trinidad and Tobago. So part of the outreach is necessary in order to spread the word out there. So the results, the timeline for the results would not be instantaneous, but I think it's a necessary effort that needs to be put in order to get returns down the road.
And the one-stop shop facility, I see that InvesTT was supposed to function as a one-stop shop, and that was discontinued. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Well, the concept of the one-stop shop is basically that you have all the relevant agencies in one place. So, for example, if you're looking to construct a building, you may have town and country planning, you may have EMA, and so on, all located in one location, so that an investor has one stop to get all the necessary approvals and review of documents and so on. So at the time, I know DPS may have a few words to add to that. We moved to a different model where there's an interministerial committee, which is chaired by the minister at the Ministry of Trade. And we work closely with the Ministry of Trade to try and effect the similar type of results in terms of that type of interaction. The best practice is at a scale, if you look at, for example, Estonia, they don't even have a stop. Everything is online. And that's really the best practice. So the investor can just put in their required information online in one form, and it goes to all the relevant agencies. So there's no stop, basically. So we are some ways away from that. I know the Ministry of Trade is making some efforts in terms of the online services that are available. So we are making progress. But how we operate right now is through collaboration with the relevant agencies. We mentioned immigration, tongue and country, WASA, T&Tech, all of them. So it's about maintaining those type of relationships to help the investor or to fast track whatever proposals they may have.
Chairman, you indicated in your opening that InvesTT, through its efforts, had realized or brought to Trinidad and Tobago investment exceeding 800 million, you said?
That's correct, yes.
Could you just give me that figure again, please?
863.
863 million over the period in question.
Could you give us an indication, and it does not have to be a total breakdown, but that investment would have been in what area?
A variety of different areas, and I can also ask the President to chime in if he feels necessary. We have transshipping as an area identified. We have logistics as areas identified. Of course, in a forum like this, we don't really want to talk about specific companies and level of investment. But it's also important to note that we also use ROIs as a return on investment as an internal KPI. So while we try and keep the level of expenditure down as low as possible, we try and maximize the return. And we use specific numbers. And if you look at the level of investment outside of the areas in question as well, you see a very good trend that will indicate that every dollar spent in InvesTT reaps a very good reward in terms of investment coming into the country. And of course, once you have a high level of investment, you have a growth effect, a compound effect on top of that. You have jobs that come along with that, and then you have people paying taxes and economic activity and support of families around that. So we are concentrating in many different areas, and we are trying to stay very consistent with the government's 2030 vision, which is an important one for the country. And our activities this year, I think in previous years have been quite varied, and a lot of successes in a lot of different areas. And I think a lot of work we're doing a lot of work internally this year to see if we can narrow the focus, stay outside of the petrochemical area, as is our remit, but really focus in on 3, 4, maybe 5 sectors that really make sense for Trinidad and Tobago, that fit well with our demographics, our skill set, our labor rates, direct flights from North America, direct flights from London. So I think we're in the reevaluation phase right now to try and find out what sectors really make sense for Trinidad and Tobago, to make sure that we don't overlook anything. And of course, the international markets are changing all the time. So technology is changing, businesses are changing, countries have inflows and outflows of FDI. FDI is down on a worldwide basis, but our numbers are ramping up. So we're also in a reevaluation phase.
You set yourself a target, for instance, to say that, I know you have a strategic plan, but have you gone in terms of setting a dollar target that you've reached 8 plus now? Have you set a figure that you'd like to?
If I may, one thing is to set the target, second thing is to how accurate is the target. So our target is based on what's in our investment pipeline. So for example, if we examine the pipeline in terms of contacts we have made or outreaches to particular investors, we see a $2 billion TT pipeline. As to how much will be achieved within, let's say, fiscal 2020, our current estimate is in the range of 200 million TT dollars for 2020. But the target is really based on what's in the pipeline, because even if an investor walks through the door tomorrow and say, hey, we looked at Trinidad and we want to invest, we're talking 1 to 2 years before it actually happens. So that's not an investment you could count right away. but it's important to make those outreach efforts and do that networking so the pipeline builds, because the actual investments generally, unless something falls in your lap, generally comes from what you have built up in your pipeline.
More question, Chairman. In terms of your executive team, and you may have inherited this, Chairman, so you have two vice presidents? You have two vice presidents?
Yes.
And they're employed on a permanent basis? And
that is correct.
Your president is on contract?
Correct.
What's he thinking there?
Well, as you rightly said, I have inherited this. That has been the modus operandi. That is the way I found it. There are different schools of thought when it comes to a position such as this. One school of thought is you really want to have somebody in for a set period of time to keep the ship pointed in a particular direction.
Yes.
Right? And encourage people to do so, as opposed to an employee of a company which may or may not be targeted or recruited to go to another agency. So in one respect, the contracts are ideal in terms of setting a time frame for the organization and keeping that direction over a lengthy period of time. And in other ways, in other respects, perhaps not as ideal, because there may be the feeling of a slight separation between yourself and the organization. I think the truth really lies in how you handle it and how you work together as a team, how you collaborate internally as well as collaboration with the different entities and the ministry itself.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Foster. Thank you for your answers. We come now to Senator Deonarine.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, everybody. Mr. Chairman, I heard that you were saying that you all are currently undergoing a re-evaluation exercise on the sectors in which you all would like to be involved in. And in response to one of Senator Cummings' questions, you said that right now investments are in the area of transshipment and logistics. Are there any other sectors? Because I looked at your website, and good job at the website, and I saw that the areas that you all are interested in are tourism, ICT, agriculture, agro-processing, maritime services, creative industries, manufacturing, and financial services. So is it that you all are expecting to move away from these sectors?
Thank you. Through the Chair, no, the expectation is not to move away from the sectors. The expectations are twofold. Number one, we have to make sure that we stay very true to the country's Vision 2030, which is a great direction if you look at it, but fairly broad in scope. So if you look at the website, you will see a lot of areas that the company InvesTT has traditionally focused on. But these are things that we think we know. So I think the way the world is moving and the economies are shifting and technology is changing, with a foreign direct investment activity, you always have to reevaluate and make sure you know what you know and you also know what you don't know. So you always have to be in this constant reevaluation stage. With transshipping, for example, and it's just one of the examples, it is perhaps an undeveloped sector that has a lot of opportunity. We have the largest natural harbor in the Western Hemisphere on our doorstep. If you look at and we're geographically located perfectly for an operation such as that. And if you look worldwide, people do a lot more with smaller resources, perhaps not a natural harbor that is as large as ours, or a geographic proximity that is ideal as ours. So we are in the reevaluation phase of the year, and I think it would be prudent to do that every year around this time, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. When we visit other IPAs in the region that have great successes as well, it is very clear that they are constantly reevaluating what they're doing. What they're doing right now may not necessarily mesh with where they need to be in 5 years. So they may be very, very successful in a particular sector, but they may be forward thinking to a point where they realize that where they are successful now, those jobs may evaporate in 5 years. So they always try and be in the reevaluation phase and the crest of the wave from a market standpoint and a technology standpoint, so that they can work with the educators, work with the organization, work with the companies that are there to start gearing up for what they see as the next phase. And that is what InvesTT is doing presently.
Okay, so could you tell me briefly what are the elements of your re-evaluation exercise currently?
If I may, and go back a little bit in terms of the types of investments which we have closed over the period. Besides the transshipping, and so we also have ICT investments, agri-processing investments, creative services, as well as manufacturing as a broad base. So in terms of going forward, the starting point for us is we've done a polling of the staff, which actually closed yesterday, to get some feedback from the staff. Okay, what are from your perspective, you work in InvesTT for a number of years, you're interacting with investors, you know where the interest lies. What are the best bets for Trinidad and Tobago from your perspective? And some of the initial results indicate things such as the logistics issue being an important investment area for us, the maritime services, ICT sector, particularly the BPO sector. What we will do with that, the next step would be to engage probably local or foreign consultants to try to pin down, okay, these are what we think is our best bets. You do the more detailed analysis as a consultant and tell us what really works for Trinidad and Tobago, what will work for InvesTT, do the research, do the comparative positions between us and other territories in the region, and then you come back and then that will fine-tune to maybe the 3-4 top wins that make sense for Trinidad and Tobago. So that will be the next stage. It doesn't mean that we go outside those areas. I would just like to make that point, because you may have an investor come through the door in an area totally that you did not consider, but which makes sense and fits in the Vision 2030 and so forth, and you treat with that investor as it happens. But it does give you better focus, as our chairman was alluding to, so you know exactly where should we focus our limited resources to get the maximum impact based on the analysis.
Okay, so during your one of the answers to the earlier questions, you indicated that 1,200 jobs were created, and I'm just wondering what areas of expertise those local jobs were focused on, of job creation. Is it skilled labor in various sectors?
It's a mix. So, for example, in the ICT sector, that accounts for a significant percentage of jobs. So that counts for maybe 300-400. And we're talking about school leaving, high school students type of qualifications, basic high school certificate at that level. Then you'll have more technical services in, let's say, the maritime services area, where you have special training or technical skills that you could apply in that type of environment. Another type of in terms of the ICT software development, we're talking university grads who may have had a degree in software development or in robotics or something like that. So it really depends on what the investor's requirements are. But you raise an important point, if I may, through the chair, because part of what InvesTT's challenge is to anticipate what the skills requirements are of the investors coming through the door, and to work with the relevant authorities, whether it be the Ministry of Education or the tertiary institutions such as UE and CASTAT and UTT, to upskill our people so that we can meet the needs of the investor when they're ready to make the investment. So, because what investors sometimes tell us, they do not necessarily expect to have a pool of labor that meets their requirements right away, but they want to know you have a system in which you can train the required people in the particular skill sets that they're looking for over a reasonable period of time. So that's part of our role as well.
And just a recommendation, maybe this should be a critical aspect of the entire reevaluation exercise, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we use as much of local labor as possible, and also make sure that there's some sort of transfer of skills taking place as well, and also some sort of integration with the other authorities to ensure that we have no skills mismatches, and ensure that we improve any mismatches that may be taking place. Another question, Chair, if you permit me. Now, I understand from studies, and you would have indicated that almost 70% of reinvestment goes towards the foreign direct investments, right? So could you shed some light on the reinvestment strategy of InvesTT?
Through the Chair, I don't know if it was a misquote, but the 70% figure, if I recall, says that basically 70% of the investment that happens in a country happens through reinvestment.
Yes, my apologies.
Yeah.
I said it incorrectly.
That's fine, Senator. So basically, while we need to keep adding to the pool of investors through sourcing and targeting and bringing new investment in, we cannot ignore the investors who are already in the country, because they're the 70% who are likely to reinvest and to spend more money. So part of the role of InvesTT is to maintain close relationships with those investors, so we never leave them. It's like a long-term marriage. So we don't just want to bring you in and you invest and we say, bye-bye, thanks for investment. It doesn't work like that. It's a long-term marriage, and that investor is now handed over to Stacey's department, the VP Investor Services, and that unit works the investor over the lifetime that they are in Trinidad and Tobago, encouraging them to reinvest. They may have certain needs. For example, they may want to expand and they need some assistance with town and country or with immigration and this sort of thing. So we always maintain contact because we're trying to encourage that 70% reinvestment.
Right. So in light of the recent economic slowdown, I saw in your submission that you said that a lot of the rate of reinvestment also slowed as well. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, through the Chair, Senator, if I can say it has slowed. What I would say is that investors work on different cycles. So we'll never see a steady graph showing investments going up all the time or going down all the time. It depends on when we interact with that investor, where are they in the investment decision cycle. So we expect to see some fluctuation, and that is a normal trend,
right,
to fluctuate.
Okay, so at present, what is the percentage of companies that have been reinvesting?
If I may, looking at 2018, where we closed 8 investments, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 8 were reinvestments.
Do you have a value?
I can get those numbers of those reinvestments.
Okay, I will appreciate that.
Yes, sure.
One more question. Now, this might pertain to Ministry of Energy and also InvesTT. What resources are being put in place to see what the contribution towards the overall GDP is in these various sectors? So, for example, are you in a position to say that compared to 2012 or 2013, when InvesTT was established, to today, that there has been an increase in contribution of GDP from the ICT sector, agro-processing sector, to date, that was directly attributable to InvesTT, the work of InvesTT and the foreign direct investment coming in from abroad?
Senator, I think that would be an element that we would have to reach out to the Central Statistical Office to get some details on, and we will follow that up. I think it is a very useful suggestion.
Okay, thank you. And also in terms of exports of services as well, and exports of goods and services, because you remember we have to be cognizant of the fact that this is a lot of work that we are putting in here, right? InvesTT is doing a lot of work, a lot of government resources are going in towards making sure that this facilitative role is working for the economy. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're able to measure the impact these things have on the economy, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are diversifying away from the energy sector, and that is the mandate of the company, to ensure that there's a certain level of diversification away from the energy sector. So just a point of recommendation and suggestion there. Thank you, Chair. That's it for that.
Thank you very much, Senator Devnarain. Next, we will hear from Minister Gatsby Dolly.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. And let me address my first question, I think, maybe to the President. I note the mandate of the company is attract, facilitate, and source investments. Yes? Okay, good. Now, I'm looking at your strategic engagement pattern for the years in question, 2014 to 2017. Now, noting that the company started in 2013, yeah? So there would have been quite a number of strategic engagements, both local as well as foreign, for the years 2014. It reduced somewhat in 2015 and 2016. So in 2014, you may have had over 10, approaching 20. 2015, maybe just about 10 or less. 2016, about 3, and then none in 2017. What I'm trying to understand is, what is the type of investment that would have been made in 2014, 15, and 16 in terms of your strategic engagements? If you can disaggregate in terms of foreign and local, that would be good as well. And I'd like to understand the rationale between 2014 to 16, that decrease, and certainly in 2017, what happened there where there was none at all, not even local, listed here, at least based on the submission that we have in front of us. And I'd like to understand what is your policy with respect to investment in that area and the returns that you get from it. So just a little bit of understanding of what happened in terms of your strategic engagements.
If I may, through the chair, I would like the answer to be started off by our manager of finance to explain in terms of the dollar spend for the initial years, and then I will come in at the end.
Okay. And if I could just ask the manager, I note you came in 2017. The manager for finance, was he here in those years, 2014, etc.?
Yes, he was.
Okay, good. So he has good perspective to give us.
Yes.
If I understand your question, member, in terms of the spend from 2014 coming forward, the spending is primarily driven by the funding provided by the MTI in terms of InvesTT's activities. And there has been a decline after those initial years in terms of the funding that has been provided. And it is now in the last 2 years or so probably leveled out a little bit, but the funding has declined from in the first years, and I don't have numbers.
You don't have a quantum for us for 2014, 15, 16 in terms of what was spent?
In terms of 20...
If I may chime in through the chair, overseas travel in 2014 was 1.7 million. 2015, 728,000. It was 0 in 2016 and 17. And I could, if I may add, for 2018, it went up to $226,000. Overall, I would say we are a lot more, I can't speak, that was the previous administration in terms of prior to 2015, the 2014 and 15 figures. But if I may say, we are a lot more focused now in terms of what events we attend or which investors we try and target to maximize in terms of the use of our resources. The initial, while there may be some allowances in 2014 for the level of travel, I don't think it may have been fully consistent with the returns that one would expect from that travel, if I may say. But as I said, that predates me.
Understood. So in terms of the focus on local strategic engagements,
yes,
has that increased while the foreign ones have decreased?
Yes, so what we did, because of course you may recall the change of administration in 2015, and of course one of the priorities then was in terms of looking at the resources. So in terms of overseas travel, that was taken a very hard look at, and I believe rightfully so. So our focus was on ramping up the website. Because if you're not traveling as much as you can, you still need for the investors to know about you and to reach you. And through the website revamp, which predated me, but it was completed in November 2017, we now have a better face to the potential investor outside there. We've also ramped up, as our chairman mentioned, the local interaction with the local chambers. And I'm not just talking the major chambers, but also the regional chambers, like the Shoguanas Chamber of Commerce, the Toko Sangre Grande Chamber, and so on, as well as in terms of the regional corporations, the actual number is actually 11 regional corporations, including Tobago, has been visited. And that is to find out, well, okay, what are your priorities in terms of investments? Mayor of Arima or the Mayor of San Fernando or Tobago or Diego Martin or Pinal de Bay, what are your priorities? What are your investment projects? Following up from that, we will also be doing some very targeted labor studies in those particular regions, but by regional corporations. So if we, for example, looking to cite a BPO set up in Pinal de Bay or in Shoguanas, what is the pool that we are drawing from? Because the point we make to investors, they may look at the unemployment rate and say, Trinidad doesn't have anybody who's not working, it's 5%, that's full employment by definition. But the reality is the pool that is required for the BPO sector is generally aged between 17 and 25, just left high school, and that unemployment rate might be more in the range of 8 to 10%. So there is a pool of people, and that's the type of work we do to try and attract and to have the information that is necessary for the investor.
So if I'm to understand correctly, then the emphasis has changed in terms of attracting the foreign to using the website to do that and to focus a lot more on your local.
Well, if I may, Minister, it's a mix. So we're trying to attract the foreign, we're trying to attract the local. We are heavy in the use of the website and the social media presence to reach out. For example, I recently attended the CRIS conference in Miami, that's Caribbean Hotel and Resort Investment Summit. And part of our protocols when we attend these events is that besides reaching out to people there, we all make sure we add them onto our personal LinkedIn pages to try and start conversations and maintain a personal network. So it's the whole strategy in this modern era, modern dynamics of reaching investors, because people invest where they know people and they like you. That's the reality of it. So if they interacted with Christopher Lewis or with Philip Naggs or so on at some event, they say, well, hey, let's consider Trinidad and Tobago because Chairman Naggs works there.
So you're saying your focus on social media and your social presence in the online environment is to the company a better spend in terms of being able to attract the foreigners rather than actually traveling and spending the amount that was spent.
So it's a change of focus because we could probably get the same results from in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. So that brings me to the question then of the country branding and marketing. And I'm seeing that aspect was an add-on to the mandate of the company, and it may not at this point be maximized to its full extent. Is the use of the website an attempt to also push forward the country branding and marketing aspect of the mandate?
The Chair, I believe the PS might be best positioned to answer the country branding issue, but basically we await guidance from our line ministry. Initially, InvesTT, prior to my being at the position, was in charge of a country branding exercise, but with the changes in administration, that was is under review at present, and I know there were some changes taking place under tourism, which is a major element of the country brand. So it is not something that we pursue right now as an agency, but we await guidance to see how best we can fit in that exercise.
Okay, so could I direct it to the PS then? What exactly is the idea behind this country branding and marketing? Is it in a tourism aspect? Is it from an investment point of view? What exactly is expected from this area?
Yes, thank you very much, Minister. I think that that is a discussion that is being held in different quarters, certainly within the Ministries of Tourism, Planning and Development. And we were of the view that InvesTT, which had actually led a group committee, an interministerial committee several years ago, that the work could have continued from that committee. As it stands now, we are of the view that another entity, another public sector entity, is being charged with looking at the overall country brand. And so we are to be guided by what that ultimate brand will be. However, in terms of moving forward with promoting Trinidad and Tobago as an investment location, we are clear that that is the niche that the Ministry of Trade and Industry is going to be going after, and that InvesTT has been doing that quite well, quite pointed in terms of looking at the areas that we have a competitive advantage and building on those. They've also, in our respectful view, reached out to the diaspora, which has been also a very useful source of generating interest, but within the clear area of investment facilitation, because the wider diaspora policy, again, falls elsewhere. But the feedback has been encouraging, and the work that they've been doing in terms of getting TNT out there, that also must be commended.
So am I to understand then that in the initial iteration of this mandate, it fell into the broad area of the total country branding of Trinidad and Tobago, not specifically in the investment area?
That was our feedback. I think that committee was established probably in 2013 or thereabouts, or maybe before, and there was a European consultant that had been engaged to look at an overall country approach, but that has since changed.
That's interesting. Would you know whether or not a report was generated from that? Was it completed? And what kind of funds were invested in that, and where that report is now?
I think that report has been completed. We can seek to have that made available, and all those other details perhaps highlighted as requested.
Okay, because it would be interesting to know whether the work that was done to generate that report and all of the analyses, whether or not they are being taken into consideration by whichever state enterprise is now going to be tasked with the role of the country branding and marketing. Because I wouldn't imagine that if we had a foreign consultant, that doesn't necessarily come cheaply. And so therefore, if there is value to be obtained from it, I think it would be important for us to understand where that value can be maximized. If I may, with regard to the receipt of the award for quality facilitation, congratulations are due. However, I want to contrast that with the moving away from the one-stop shop model that existed prior to 2016. And to understand, in moving the model, were awards obtained before 2016 when the one-stop shop model was used? Yes?
Yes.
And so moving away from that model, you were still able to obtain awards. So I want to understand what was the rationale for moving away from that particular model, and I want to understand whether or not, where the receipt of the award suggests that what is in place now, the model in place now, is at least reasonably effective. I want to understand what was the policy decision and why, the justification.
If I may interpret through the chair, I believe it was a question of best use of people's interpretation of whether how effective the one-stop shop was, because really it is a challenge in the absence of a legislative framework that says, hey, you InvesTT and you have the authority to go into any particular government agency and get information or get follow-up action, or to get an investor's proposal to the top of the pile. In the absence of that legislative framework, it becomes a question of moral suasion and persuading and contacts, and people change, heads change. So at the time, the thinking was that maybe the one-stop shop was not as effective as it could have been. It has morphed into a new variation, the Interministerial Committee, which is led by the Ministry of Trade. I believe a key element going forward and to be successful in terms of investor facilitation is the whole question of the ease of doing business and making improvements, which again is being led by the Ministry of Trade. We make our recommendations from time to time, which they consider, but there's certain things like opening up business. The standard in Trinidad and Tobago is 7 days from the analysis. The world best standard is 2 hours in Macedonia. So these are the gaps that we have to try and close. And I believe if we close those gaps in terms of the ease of doing business, well, then the one-stop shop idea will become a redundant one because, it will be easy for everybody.
So when you mentioned moral suasion, I felt, as a representative, I felt as though I know exactly how that feels. When you say now that you have this interministerial committee, so representation comes then from all of the different agencies and stakeholders, and they meet regularly and so are able to fast track the applications and so on?
Yes, Minister, and if I may answer that question, yes. In fact, the Interministerial Committee was established in 2017, and it's primarily for investment facilitation over 30 million TT dollars, over $5 million US dollars. So InvesTT really does, they continue to do what they would normally do, but in the case where there may be a larger investment, we really want to ensure that there are no hurdles. And sometimes when the issues come to the table, it may be something as simple as not getting feedback in the anticipated time frame from a particular state agency. What having people around the table has done is that the different agencies are able to say, oh, this is being initiated, send us a copy one time, or give us that update one time, so we don't have to wait another 2 weeks or another 2 months. And it has been quite useful in terms of being able to unclog some matters, and I think that it has been a good generator of goodwill and moving processes forward that might have been otherwise adversely looked at.
So how often does this interministerial committee meet?
We, at the ministry, that sometimes it's perhaps once a quarter or as required, but the absence of meeting does not mean that one does not move forward with an issue. In fact, one of my colleagues here is practically on the phone every day or every other day with any particular agency, whether it be Town and Country Planning, whether it be T&Tech, whether it be the EMA, to see how far a particular process has reached, or with the investor himself or herself, who might be a little concerned about the pace at which things are moving forward. So that is not necessarily aligned exclusively to the date of a meeting. At this constant interaction and approaches to the different entities as required on a daily basis.
So the composition of that committee, what level of officer is represented? It's chaired by the Minister of Trade.
It is.
And what is the composition of the representation from the other agencies?
They're usually very senior technocrats from the AG's office, Deputy Chief State Solicitor, people who are at a high managerial level.
Decision makers.
Decision makers or very close to decision makers. Director Town and Country, sometimes 2 or 3 persons may come from a particular agency, say from WASA or T&Tech, depending on, or maybe the Ministry of Works and Transport dealing with the roads and highways division. So there are a number of different areas that are represented by people who are in a position, A, to know the intricacies of the particular project, what may constitute a hurdle or an impediment, and also to give advice as to what needs to be done. And again, through collaboration with others around the table, realize, okay, well, you've started this, please make sure this is not, you don't leave us out of the loop, so we can work collaboratively to get this moving forward. And I would have to say that it has been a very positive element, and the persons who have been representing their different entities, they are very committed. They go back to their different agencies. They come back to say, okay, this has been done. Really, it's a full team effort, and they also have to be commended as well.
So if I understand you correctly then, though the committee may formally meet once a quarter, what it has created, or the convening of it, has created a network led by Ministry of Trade, who interacts directly with the investor above a certain level, 5 million US. And then the Ministry of Trade then would be able to, based on the membership of this committee, basically, in principle, have a one-stop shop that happens and assists. So is that exactly what it is?
Well, I would say that that, in essence, is what emerges. Because the one-stop shop really is just go to one place and so on. But by having a team around the table, working on resolving issues, that helps to move processes forward. And I also have to say, in terms of the electronic approach, we have in train our single electronic window, which does help to move things forward from an e-point of view. And that has been a very useful element. I think we're the only ones in the Caribbean, in the Commonwealth Caribbean, in the CARICOM, with such an entity that helps to bring a portal to persons who are looking to invest in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're committed to moving forward, and we're committed to working within the single electronic window framework to develop the systems with other ministries and other agencies so that we can move from what is current to what is best practice, and certainly improve our standing in the doing business score.
Chairman, you wanted to join in?
Yes, if I may, through the chair. I would just like to point out that a one-stop shop approach is a good approach if can be considered a good approach if the system needs it. In an ideal world, a company that is working together with a country and ministries to attract foreign direct investment would, if everything was working at 100% and we are firing on all pistons, then you really wouldn't need a one-stop shop because the system would work for itself. So we do meet with representatives in European countries who are able to, as the President stated, you're able to come into those countries and open a business in 2 hours or 3 hours. So the ministry is really doing a lot of work in that area, and the idea really is to create a system that works. So this portal is really best case and best practice, and if that can work very, very well, then the resources and efforts of a company like InvesTT can be squarely targeted at the domain where it should be. So you can spend less effort on trying to resolve issues and pave the way and cut through red tape and whatnot, and perhaps spend more energy trying to source investors to come to Trinidad and Tobago. So work is being done in the background, and I'm very hopeful that at some point we have this elegant system that works well through electronically well, and ties in together all the state agents, approvals, applications for incentives perhaps, so that we can squarely do what we do best, and that is try and find more people to come into Trinidad and Tobago, bring foreign exchange and create jobs.
Okay, and just my last question. All of these factors that we have been speaking about in terms of the rate at which we can do things and trying to facilitate investment would affect the achievement of your investment targets. So Senator Cummings had mentioned about the targets before, and I know you had gone into some detail with respect to what's in the pipeline and using those to set the targets and then to determine whether or not you've met them. So for the time under investigation 2014 to 17, the company would have fallen under its targets. And there would be different reasons why. My question is, what are the main areas that would have contributed to not meeting the targets? And I would want to know also how realistic the targets were set in terms of all of the different things that go into ensuring that it goes from application to actually having the investment made. Are your targets realistic? Were they realistic in the start? Are they more realistic now? What's happening in your present day? Are you coming closer to meeting those targets? That's the kind of discussion I want to engage now.
Thank you, Minister. Through the chair, I believe the dollar targets that were set in prior years were not realistic. They were sort of taken from some source that was unrelated to actual activity happening on the ground. So going forward, because our new chairman has raised the point as well about setting dollar targets going forward. What we moved to in 2017, around that 16-17 was targets based on number of investments, because it was so hard to put a dollar value to the investment. So for example, in 2018, the target was 4 investments, 2 reinvestment, 2 new investments. We actually achieved 8. So we exceeded the number target for 2018 in terms of what I could speak of from recent times. But we can't set a dollar target, but it has to be based on reality. What's in the pipeline? What do you expect to close within the next year or the next 2 years? Other than that, you would just be pulling a figure that looks good on paper, but it doesn't have the grounding in reality.
So it doesn't look so good the next year when you don't make it.
Correct.
A little bit,
yes, and that would have a demotivating impact as well on the team, because if it's so far out of reach. But I believe if we really scrutinize our pipeline, which is what we're doing for 2020, and say, hey, well, you guys say you have this big $2 billion pipeline, and you could get 200 and let's say 250 million in investments next year. This is based on your numbers, so that's your target, because you're telling me this is what you can do, and this is what you have to now go out and achieve. So I believe that type of approach will be more fruitful in the long run, and it will be more motivating for the team, because they know where the numbers coming from. Which doesn't mean to say that someone can walk through the door tomorrow and come with but that doesn't come, because that's not something that was in your radar.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following up on some of the discussions that we had between the committee here and you in terms of where's InvesTT going and so on, can I pose this question to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Industry? Madam Permanent Secretary, there are great similarities between the goals of InvesTT and other state enterprises, namely, for instance, Trinidad and Tobago Free Zones Limited, Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center. And when I say that, let me just explain that. The Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center has as its goals to attract and facilitate foreign direct investment in the financial services sector that would enhance the growth and diversification of the economy by creating sustainable employment and generating foreign exchange. That is the TTIFC. The Free Zone company has leveraging our competitive advantage to provide an investment-friendly environment that facilitates business activities to achieve our aims of national economic diversification, job creation, and attractive investor returns. So these two are almost similar, but one dealing more with finance. And then you have InvesTT, which you enunciated are your goals as well. So given the clear-cut similarities of all three enterprises, Could you tell this committee, given the overlapping goals and roles that from the three, and there are more, where do you place InvesTT in this scenario, knowing that TTFIC, OIFC, and Free Zone exist? What's the relationship with one and the other? And how is the distinction made and the prevention of overlapping of roles and the confusion that could ensue as a result of these three doing the same thing? Could you give some clarification on that?
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. A useful observation indeed, but I think we see the investment promotion agency, InvesTT, as the window to the world. And anyone looking to invest into Trinidad and Tobago will perhaps first reach to the IPA, reach to InvesTT. And so as the window to the world, as the gatekeepers, as the doorkeepers, they would be charged with giving information about investing in Trinidad and Tobago, why we are a preferred location, and of course the varied reasons. The Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center, they do operate under the aegis of the Ministry of Finance, and they're specifically looking at financial services. And of course, that is in keeping with those 7 areas that have been identified in Vision 2030 under one of the goals in Theme 4, Building Globally Competitive Businesses. There are 7 areas that have been identified: financial services, maritime, agriculture and agro-processing, fish and fish processing, creative industries, maritime industries, aviation services. InvesTT has an overview, if you like, of the remit of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the areas of interest, but InvesTT is looking at the non-energy sector. There is, in our view, no real overlap because InvesTT has a clear mandate. They also reach out to others. If, for example, someone is interested, and I could think of a case of a BPO company that InvesTT was responsible for bringing on board, and once they get this particular interest, they then need to find the best local entity to move it forward. And so the Trinidad and Tobago Free Zones Company may come in at that stage. So they then take it to another level in terms of creating an environment where the investor can happily establish and move forward. So in a sense, while there are similar objectives, I think that they are there's not necessarily an overlap per se. InvesTT does not deal with financial services exclusively. If something along that line would come to their attention, they would ask the IFC to follow through given their remit. But as the gateway, as the doorway, reaching out to the external community, InvesTT really is best positioned to do that. I don't think the TT Free Zones Company, that they do have that outreach, and therefore when they are dealing with any entities that are applying for that status, they go along a different route, a different path, but ultimately the same objective is to ensure that you have a well-functioning environment for the investor to move forward in.
If I am to put this to you, would you agree that there should be, first of all, is there coordination between these 3 enterprises? Because one overlaps on the other. And should there be some coordination between all foreign investment authorities, like the 3 we're mentioning, to bring about a convergence and a complementarity by having only one existing enterprise which fulfills the functions of these 3 companies? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I would have to look at...
And then you can have different divisions within that one enterprise.
That is a useful way forward, but I think we also have to look at the work of National Energy and NGC. and they are very specific in attracting energy investments. And so as of now, I think it is important for there to be awareness and information sharing in the current construct, take into consideration that there's expertise that is lodged in the different areas.
Can they not come together with this expertise so you have a coordinative, functioning enterprise that one is knowing what the other one is doing right inside there rather than trying to find out what one is doing outside? One is here and one is there. And that's why you probably have to have these meetings of your different departments so that you, in those meetings, you're trying to bring the thoughts together. But if you have one enterprise that deals with the entire process, you are the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry. So I'm putting this to you to see how you might want to respond even further on that issue.
I think that we're responsible, the Ministry of Trade and Energy, for the non-energy sector.
Sure. But so are the others. TT Finance might not have a strong thing with energy, but they may have in other areas. And I'll come to the other areas which you spoke about just a while ago. But go ahead.
Yes, Member, I think, Mr. Vice Chair, that it's a very useful suggestion. I believe that there is some degree of engagement and collaboration among the different entities that currently exist. We still are of the view that the IPA is best positioned to respond to any inquiry and then, as required, channel those inquiries to whether it is the energy sector, whether it is the financial sector. But your proposal is something that is deserving of greater
in terms of a governance
research.
Prospect, you know. It's always a good thing to have one major enterprise that can have its wings in different areas, but there is a coordination at the top. But I thought I would bring this to your attention for possible consideration at some time by your committee who may want to look at it. And I'm now going to refer, go ahead, you wanted to say something.
Yes, sorry about that. I just wanted to say that, the committee, the Interministerial Committee, does not look at the energy side of the aspect of the equation, but I believe if you would be...
I wasn't speaking about the energy, I was speaking, I will come to the areas which I'm speaking about now. Let me draw your attention to major investment incentives in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is for InvesTT. You have the manufacturing sector, the creative sector, tourism sector, agriculture sector, and the maritime sector, trade financing, and then, of course, you have some across the other sectors, and then last of all is the energy, but we're not going into the energy. There are major investment incentives across each one of these sectors. Is InvesTT aware of these incentives so that you can use these incentives in a proactive manner to help international organizations, businesses, to let them know that these are the incentives that we have in Trinidad and Tobago? How does InvesTT, are you first of all aware of these incentives? Let's take the manufacturing sector. What incentives you, as InvesTT, are aware of so that you could sell to the world that these, if you come to manufacture in Trinidad, these are the incentives you can benefit from?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to start by saying that the Ministry of Finance has done a very good job of putting all the incentives together in one package, which is available online as well, and which they shared with us and which we share with investors as need be. So we are aware of the incentives, what are available in each of the sectors, whether it's manufacturing, whether it is agriculture, agro-processing, which doesn't really apply to foreign investors. But the point I would like to make is that incentives are available throughout the world. In terms of if you go to any country, you go to Jamaica, you go Barbados, you'll get a different slew of incentives. So what distinguishes one territory from the other is not necessarily so much the incentives, but the ease of doing business. How easy is it to come into the country and to set up and to get going?
Can I stick a pin?
Yes, sure.
The ease of doing business has degenerated to some extent in Trinidad over the last few years. And so what was a certain amount of days of doing business has now been gone to an area where you have more days than should really occur. For instance, if you had 15 days of doing business from the initial part to the end point, now the amount of days that doing business has worsened. Could you comment on that? Where we were a few years ago, where we are now?
I'll start off the question, Chair, but I believe that our Director of Policy will probably have a few points to add to that. What I would like to say, because I recently attended an ease of doing business conversation held in Barbados through sponsorship partly of Caribbean Export. And we can make improvements in Trinidad and Tobago in a particular area, but our ease of doing business ranking or score could fall because they're comparing us with the rest of the world.
Well, we have to.
Yes, so the point is that we have to make...
We are one of the 200 countries around the world, and
correct.
We have to be compared. So if you were to get foreign direct investment, you have to be good, you have to be efficient, effective, and so go ahead.
The point I'd like to make, Chair, is that you have to make significant improvement. So 10% improvement, 12% would not work. What the consultants advise is that we're talking 40% at least minimum.
What are you doing about
each of the pillars?
What is InvesTT and so on doing to help coordinate your work to help to reduce ease of doing business? The Permanent Secretary mentioned the single electronic window.
Yes.
And so how do you use this? Where are we now in the international scale, and where were we a few years ago?
If I may defer the question, please, through Chairman, to the Director of Policy, who is specifically engaged in that very question.
Can we have the answer?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Where are we now? What number we ranked?
We are currently ranked number 91, 91st.
Could you give us the preceding years where we were ranked? This is 2019.
Well, in 2019, 91st.
Yes. Let's say 2015, 2016. Where were we?
Over the last 3 to 4 years, we have seen a readjustment of the ease of doing business methodology worldwide.
All right.
And it is a fact that you have seen the rankings improve and deteriorated in various areas. So, for example, it is not important just to look at the overall ease of doing business ranking.
Mr. Karim, let's focus. I asked a question, where are we now? You said 91.
Right.
There are a lot of questions I can ask related to that, but I want to focus back on some of these. Where were we, let's say, 2015, 2016? What number?
We were in the early 80s.
80s. So we are deteriorating.
Yes.
Now, has that come to the attention of InvesTT and all those who are players in the field of doing business with a single electronic window and all the incentives that we have? Could you, if you're Director of Policy, could you enlighten us in a short way what focus action you are taking to ensure that the ease of doing business come to the 50s and the 40s and the 30s, so that countries internationally could say, well, you know, Trinidad and Tobago, we have the business ability, we can get the things done very quickly. I know that there are some countries where you can get your things done in 2 or 3 days.
Right.
So just some short comments on that.
Yes, Chairman. So InvesTT actively promotes the single electronic window for their clientele. So all foreign investors seeking investment facilitation through InvesTT are referred to the single electronic window. Over the last, I would say, 9 to 10 years, we have made significant strides in various areas of doing business.
But yet still we going down?
Well, it's
Although
actually...
you said you're making strides, we are going in the
So
opposite direction.
let me explain. It's directly related to what the president said. The fact of the matter is, while Trinidad and Tobago has been making incremental changes, there are other countries that are moving much faster than we are.
Well,
and
sure,
that is the reality.
listen, you are a country, you're a developed country.
Yeah.
You're considered by the OECD as a developed country. And if these countries are making fast developments, you have to catch pace with them.
Agreed.
Because you're going to be left behind. So don't use an excuse that they are doing faster. And, well, of course, we are being slower. But we have to move with the pace that they are moving.
Yeah.
But all right, I just wanted to have some answers on that issue.
Chairman, if I may, not to interrupt, but I just want to ask about that change in methodology. What exactly is that? Because I want to make sure I'm following the conversation.
Yeah.
We're comparing apples with apples. So if beg your indulgence, what is this issue of the change in methodology?
Right. So I'm glad that for this question, because the doing business rankings have now moved more perception-based than actually based on empirical indicators. So what they literally do is send out a questionnaire in the last 2 years to various stakeholders within the domestic economy and ask stakeholders to give their perception of the domestic business climate. In addition, they have actually made it much more difficult for smaller countries to rank very high in the doing business indicator. So if you look at trading across borders, for example, the first 30 countries are European countries. That's a fact. And the reason why and I see Senator Diona Ryan is shaking her head, because it is the European countries, one of the indicators that are ranked higher is if you have how easy it is to trade across your immediate trading partner. So the doing business indicator, we have seen the World Bank and to some extent the World Economic Forum adjust to favor different clientele. But Chairman, if I may,
quick focus.
In 30 seconds, under the Ministry of Trade, we have been vigorously attacking the area doing business. We have invested and we have seen significant improvements in the customs clearance process. Trading across borders, starting a business is now 3 days, getting import permits and licenses.
All right.
But
you said that's the customs issue.
Right.
Today you're hearing that for some unknown reason,
right,
the people who are importing products into Trinidad taking days before they can get their things, they are paying increased demurrage, and you were saying that you're using customs and so on to improve your efficiency. But if you're moving from 60 or 70 and 80 and you're going to 91, you're trying to imply that the international ranking agency which is doing this, their methodology is something wrong. But I would differ from you on that, but we will hold on that. Now, the manufacturing sector, I was coming to ask you, what if you know of your incentives that you can project to the rest of the world? You were saying that countries around the world have different incentives, and they may have the same incentives as you have. But are you aware of what incentives you have now for the manufacturing sector, if you can explain some of these?
I wouldn't have 100% awareness, but of course I know certain elements,
such as
the capital allowances, such as the tax concessions that you may have. You may qualify for a free zone status if you have 75% exports element in your manufacturing. There are some training allowances and so on. So it varies, really depends on the investor.
All right. May I ask you to familiarize yourself with your own document, Appendix A1 to 6, with your major investment incentives in Trinidad and Tobago. And you have these at the forefront of your company's torch in moving to the rest of the world and saying that these are our incentives. You will not get better than these. These are what we're offering you. And this is just not manufacturing. Fiscal incentives, import duty concessions, approved small company status, free trade zones, allowance to the manufacturing sector, tax exemption for the housing sector, construction of multi-story car parks and so on. And then you have the same for the creative sector, You have for tourism, and you have for agriculture, etc. And you have the maritime sector. This is what I want to ask you now, come into the maritime. Yes, go ahead.
If I may, Chair. Yeah, 1 second. In terms of a process and approach, when an investor comes to us or we approach an investor in a particular sector or manufacturing enterprise, we analyze the incentives in detail in our research unit to determine what's the best fit for that particular operation.
Sure,
so rather than give them a bag of incentives to say, well, okay, this is what we offer. Right. So we try to tailor it.
The point I'm trying to make to you,
yes.
President.
Yes.
You said when they come to you.
Or we go to them. So we need to understand what they need.
I'm not getting that coming forward, that you're going to them. And the chairman wants to say something.
Yes. Chairman, thank you. I think the suggestion is centered around bringing the incentives from the background to the forefront, arming yourself with the incentives and making your sales pitch very, very clear to the rest of the world. I think that is a fantastic approach and a timely suggestion. Up to yesterday in the offices, we had some conversations with the team internally, and part of the sector analysis and where we fit, where we can be competitive on a worldwide forum, part of that analysis, the board has asked that the officers of the company, when developing that spearheaded approach, also examine the incentives in great detail. Once that is complete, and we have a new, refreshed 4 or 5 sector spearhead approach, now you drill down into the sales pitch. And inside of the sales pitch, you will have the incentives that are needed for your operation to work efficiently in Trinidad and Tobago. So now we are properly armed to be able to approach investors and say, come to Trinidad and Tobago, this is what we're selling, and this is why it makes sense for you. And some of the very top headlines inside of that sales pitch would be the incentives. So you talk demographics, labor rate, energy rate, etc., but the incentives play a big part. So your point is very, very valid and very timely. I think that's what we're doing now. You cannot have these incentives, which were very well thought out, linger in the background. They have to be brought to the forefront into the sales pitch. And of course, once you have the sales pitch, not only can the organization go out there and find and source these investors, but the site selectors that are assisting you finding customers for your country are armed with real data and real incentives. Your foreign delegations have a sales pitch. So when they meet investors and they meet business leaders in their countries, they understand why we are targeting the sector and why it makes sense for you to come to Trinidad and Tobago. And inside of that, the incentives play a big part. And if you don't use them, they're not serving any purpose in the background.
We're very gratified to know that, Mr. Chairman, and that you have availed yourselves of all the information there. You're seizing the opportunity, and you're taking it internationally so that the Trinidad will benefit from your knowledge and your vision to take this knowledge externally. Now, can I ask you, what is your relationship with the foreign missions that Trinidad and Tobago has across the world, across the globe? And how do you use the foreign missions for the work of InvesTT?
Thank you, Chair. The foreign delegations really assist when we have events located within the area. For example, the CRIS conference that the President attended earlier this year. The foreign delegations could be a real help and sort of a collection point for people in the area that might be of interest of Trinidad and Tobago. However, I think the President could speak about it better than I can from a day-to-day basis. But from where I sit, I think there is a great opportunity to engage the foreign delegations in a more of a proactive manner and have them essentially, these people are in different markets working on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. So I think we have to do our part to enable them, for them to help us find sources.
So therefore, would you consider your team working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all the ambassadors and the international representatives of Trinidad and Tobago, providing the information from them, have it in their handbooks at the embassies so that they can sell for you what you were trying to sell. Is that
Thank
what
you, Chair.
plan
If you look at any world-class best practice in IPA function and sourcing, the foreign delegations play a huge part.
Right.
And that is just best practice.
So we are here to try to assist you. So we want to put forward these recommendations to try to bring about greater effectiveness of your. So these are recommendations we will make in our report, which will be laid in Parliament for you to appreciate as well. So these are some of the things. The last area I want to ask before Senator Mao. Yes, President.
If I may add, Chair, we have a standing protocol with the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. It says common practice when a new ambassador, high commissioner is posted anywhere, one of the steps required in Trinidad and Tobago before they go to their new jurisdiction is to meet with InvesTT. And we present.
It should go beyond that and have a concerted effort to inform all of them, rather than one by one, and have a determined relationship with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
What I was alluding to is that just the start.
Right. Okay,
so we do have an ongoing relationship
you get
with
a
them.
picture. I just wanted to ask on the maritime aspect. We have been saying as a country a long time now, the maritime sector is one for a lot of opportunities. Is there anything that InvesTT is doing at the moment or has done that will ensure a realization of more investments in the maritime sector?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the maritime sector, we have been working very closely over a number of years with the Maritime Services Division, who has a large amount of the responsibility for the waters around Trinidad and Tobago and what goes in it. So we've assisted them in terms of the framework, which I believe has been passed by Cabinet now, for the monitoring or the regulation of cold stacking, warm stacking, and transshipment operations in the Gulf of Paria, which has led to, for example, special zones which have been indicated through the Maritime Services Division as to where these types of activities can take place. So it's a partnership. We can't do it by ourselves, and we don't attempt to. So we work hand in hand, I could say, with the Maritime Services Division, in particular, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, of course, as need be, or any other authority, to grow that industry.
Is there anything on board at the moment that will result in the creation of foreign direct investment in that sector?
Well, actually, I got a draft today from the manager investments in transshipment for an operator, a foreign direct investor from China, who has started some transshipment operations. So I indicated to the manager investment I needed to get confirmation from the Maritime Services Division as to the extent of their collaboration and their authority in terms of being aware of these transactions and being okay with them before we took it forward and considered it a closed investment.
Before I hand over to my chair, Senator Mark, I want to appeal to you, if it's possible, to really have a deep introspection into the agricultural sector, because that's where Trinidad diversification is going to be. So we need a lot of work from there. We need work in the maritime sector and in the tourism sector, because the Minister of Tourism has enunciated so many incentives.
Yes.
And then, so we need to beef up our work forward in trying to get these foreign people to come down and build more hotels and so on, and increase your work there.
Correct.
So thank you for your answers, and I now hand over to Senator Mark.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Dr. Bopi Singh. Good morning. It's almost rushing towards noon. I have a few questions I'd like to raise for clarification. InvesTT is an investment promotion agency, and one would hope that for it to do its work properly, efficiently, and effectively, you would need to have some degree of stability, autonomy. You should be able to have a well-resourced organization with the technical competencies so that you can execute your goals and objectives. But when I look at the submission made by InvesTT and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, one reaches the inescapable conclusion that InvesTT has become literally a ward like Tobago was of Trinidad before it became part of one nation, one society. One gets the impression that InvesTT has grown into a ward of ETEC. No, it seems as if InvesTT depends on ETEC for a number of activities, including providing it with resources to finance its operations. Would you agree with me, Madam Permanent Secretary, President, Chairman of InvesTT?
Thank you, Chairman.
That is an area that we need to pay some attention to.
Sure. You know, I appreciate you may have gotten that impression from reading through the literature, but really, it really is not so. ETEC provides some outsourced functions for InvesTT, which are non-essential to the, well, not essential to the business, but non-essential to the core purpose of the company. So InvesTT is out there trying to source investors, facilitate and retain investment in Trinidad and Tobago through FDI and LDI. ETEC is providing some support services. So they will provide a core audit function to make sure the company is in line, make sure reconciliations are being done properly, making sure that everything is operating as it should. So you will have a finance function, you will have an HR department, some support with IT services. But other than that, so these are really background, important but background services provided by ETEC, and we thank them very much for that. And InvesTT on a daily basis is very, very focused on getting foreign direct investment into Trinidad and making sure that the people that come here are very well facilitated and serviced. And ETEC really has no involvement in that area.
If you...
If I may,
Madam Permanent Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you also pose this question to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, I'd also like to say that InvesTT and it was actually a part of ETEC many moons ago, and in the wisdom of the then administration, it was vital to excise the functions because the IPA really is necessary to operate on its own. And I think, therefore, as the chairman has just said, the functions that are being undertaken by ETEC, that is actually all part of having as tight as an organization as possible so that the core competencies can be pursued as best as possible. And if I may also take this opportunity just to make a slight correction to an earlier question posed by the Vice Chair. I think, regrettably, Trinidad and Tobago is at 105 on the Doing Business platform, but there is a very clear process moving forward with all of the different ministries to improve our country, our national standing, and there are different areas that are being concurrently worked on. Thank you.
In the last 2 years, InvesTT has accumulated a deficit of close to $11.4 million, and that is between 2016 and 2017, which represents a 13.6% increase between those 2 years. What is the current state of play as it relates to this growing deficit that has been accumulating? As we speak today, President, Permanent Secretary, Chairman, what is the current reality as it relates to the deficit? And how does InvesTT intend to address this growing deficit in your system?
May Chair, through the Manager of Finance, could start off the answering to that question.
Mr. Chairman, since September 30th, 2018, the deficit has not grown. The year-to-date performance of the company, nil, zero profit, zero loss. So it has not grown since September 30th, 2018.
So at the moment, can you share with this committee what is the current balance in terms of your growing deficit as of December 2018? Where are we?
Sorry about that. As at the end of May 2019, the deficit stood at $11.671 million.
11.6, okay.
Right, which is the same thing it was at September 30th, 2018.
And what steps are we taking to have that addressed? Seeing that it has stopped growing, you would like to probably address getting rid of that number in your books. What is InvesTT doing to have that matter addressed?
Addressing the issue requires closer collaboration with the MTI, and perhaps the President could speak to that in terms of providing adequate funding and trying to find some funding to address the issues of deficit that has been brought forward.
If I may, Chair, and if you go to the origins of the deficit, if you look at the Cabinet note establishing InvesTT, it actually states that InvesTT will be funded through the revenues of VTech. So it was never envisaged to be a standalone, self-funded, self-financing institution. What has happened over the time and why the deficit, in a sense, had built up, so the debt, the liabilities, the ETech, I think, is in the range of $5.9 million. ETech was funding the daily operations, the salaries, and even the PSIP accounts of InvesTT. So we've started preliminary discussions because it was raised at the shareholders meeting, which we just had for 2018, from the Ministry of Finance was asking in terms of what's happening with that, because it has caused concerns from the external auditor standpoint as well, in terms of going concern issues which were raised. But we have no fear of that based on the consistent funding from the government. But it's a matter that needs to be addressed because it just looks bad on your balance sheet. And if external investors were to look at our balance sheets, they would not be too impressed. So what we are hoping for is some resolution which will involve Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance and powers that be to determine how to treat, essentially the core of it is that debt to ETech, which was built up over the years. So, and there are different constructs which can be taken, but that's outside of my remit to suggest what will happen. But it has to be dealt with because it just makes the balance sheet look very bad.
When I look at your balance sheet or your financial audited statements for 2017, you would agree with me that close to 90% of your allocation, which is about $8 million for recurrent expenditure, and you have another 3 million for PSIP purposes. You will agree with me that close to 90% is taken up, eaten up in terms of staff costs and related expenses and director fees and allowances. Can you share with us what is the current level of staffing at InvesTT?
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, the current level is 18. We are going through a process of recruiting to fill some vacancies, but I expect it would max in the range of maybe 21, 22 employees. We have always been a small entity. I think at peak, if I look over the years since 2014, it peaked at 24 employees, and it was 21 in 2017. So we're currently at 18.
And just good. One more point. President, I also would like to clarify, and this is a matter we had raised with the Permanent Secretary. Even though you are in receipt of $8 million as it relates to recurrent expenditure, and another $3 million for PSIP, I think it is incumbent upon InvesTT to establish its own independent internal audit unit. This tendency that we are seeing emerging of piggybacking on other organizations and entities, with involving organizations that are independently incorporated under the Companies Act. And once you are incorporated under the Companies Act of this country, and you understand the manual that governs your activity, that is the State Enterprises Manual, Performance Manual, you will realize that you have a fundamental duty and responsibility to have established within your organization an independent unit, maybe of one person, of two persons. But you cannot continue to piggyback on ETEC for internal audit functions. So I would like to ask the Permanent Secretary to take responsibility along with the Ministry of Finance to ensure that there is an independent internal audit unit within the operations of InvesTT. I'll pause at this time and ask my colleague.
Chairman, sorry, just on a point of clarity, did you ever have an internal audit unit from the time it was set up in 2013?
No.
So you've never had one?
No, we've never had one.
Just clarifying, thanks.
But in addition to the statements and so on posed and the questions asked, there are a few areas relevant to these. One is, I see here that you have about 14 vacant positions based on your organizational structure. Yes. Yeah, and how do you intend, you're going to fill these positions shortly?
If I may, Chair.
For the fulfillment of your mandate, yeah.
Yes, I think the 14 vacancies is a little ambitious in terms of what we really need as an institution going forward. Taking apart, and it says 14, but remember too, a lot of those positions are really being filled by ETEC in terms of the support roles. So when we talk HR, we talk finance function, we talk internal audit, we talk procurement. There are bodies occupying those responsibilities for InvesTT, but they reside in ETEC.
So based on that,
yes,
Mr. President, you may need to revise the organizational structure based on what is happening with your subsidiary, well, not your subsidiary, but your partner,
yes,
ETEC. So would you consider revising your own organizational structure, or you would ask ETEC or make recommendations to ETEC to let you fill these positions yourselves so that you can do your own work?
Chair, if I may, it's a matter of funding. Pardon? Yes, yes. So it's a matter of funding primarily because we can say, yes, we'll fill these 14 vacancies tomorrow, but next month when they come for payment, we may have a challenge.
So you give them the government gives a subvention to you. I was reading somewhere close to about 10 million per year, around there.
We're trending towards 8 million for this
right.
fiscal.
I think it was 10 and then went down.
Yes.
And how much do you get really from e-tech, or is it for service but not funding, direct funding?
For service, but no payment is made to e-tech.
No, I remember recently that $300 million was moved from UTT to e-tech in Tamana Park. The reasons for that we didn't know.
Yes.
Whether that some would have gone to InvesTT, some would have gone somewhere else. Did you benefit at all from that $300 million that was transferred from UTT to e-tech in Tamana Park?
I'm now hearing of it, Chair, but I could defer to the ministry.
It's public knowledge over a period of time now.
Well, certainly not since I'm at InvesTT. I have not seen
Perhaps you should seek your share of it.
Chairman, just a clarification. I want to clarify really what is the role of e-tech. Because if I'm understanding, e-tech is partnering in terms of service, and you're not paying e-tech. Does e-tech, so does e-tech give you, does the money come from the government through e-tech to you?
No, it comes directly from the government. Well, through the Ministry of Trade, they tell us the check is ready, we come and we collect the check.
Well, Chairman, I highly doubt anything passing to e-tech would pass directly to InvesTT.
All right. Well, the other issue here that in terms of the operations of your enterprise, I notice you don't have a project management unit. Is there any reason, or is there that you feel that you will do so pretty shortly? Because in the execution of any one of your plans, you need a PMU in your thing. Some comments from you on that?
Sure, Chair. We rely on technology in that sense. We use Salesforce, which is a software for customer relationship management, and basically that is what manages all the projects. So anyone working in InvesTT can go into the system and say, well, Chris Lewis met with customer X yesterday, and this is what transpired, and these are the next steps. And that is how we keep track. We have a reporting system internally within each unit, as well as monthly to the board in terms of dashboards and to get a prize as the progress of each project. But the heart of our project management is the Salesforce software system.
Or is a software system which is shared by?
Yes, by everybody who's in the organization, and can pull it up and see what's going on with any project.
So the core of the organization deals with the project management itself?
Well, each entity, because we have different, in terms of how InvesTT is structured, besides the executive team, myself, the two VPs, you have the investor services led by Stacy, you have the investments unit, Seiko is here present, you have the research and business intelligence unit, and you have the marketing team. So these teams basically input all their information into Salesforce and can keep track of what each other is doing. So nothing is left in someone's desk drawer.
Okay. I just want to ask you two quick questions. Given the heightened need to strengthen non-energy investment, because we all know the current decline in the energy sector, what efforts are really being made, if you can tell this country, by InvesTT to promote national investment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that may be at your fingertips.
Well, I mentioned some of them already in terms of our online outreach efforts. That's key for us in terms of that external investor. Outside there, people being aware of what Trinidad and Tobago has to offer, which industries, which incentives are available, what are the opportunities we have identified. Secondly, very targeted outward events, outreach programs. So two that is on our radar at all times is one is the CRIS, which I mentioned, the Caribbean Hotel and Resort Investment Summit, which is for the hotel investment coming in, as well as the Site Selectors Guild, which is a major event held every year. And these site selectors are hired by the major Fortune 500 companies to determine where to place their investments. So it's important to build those sorts of relationships. We also do internal activities. So I also referenced the tourism investment roundtable, which was very successful. We had 4 major international hotel chains come to Trinidad at their own expense because they see Trinidad and Tobago as a very viable market for tourism. And we'll say, well, what about the rest of the Caribbean? And that's the reason why we're different. We may not have the levels of growth as the rest of the Caribbean, but because we're fairly new in the tourism space, we are attractive to them. And Trinidad separately from Tobago are seen as two different entities by those foreign investors.
Is there anything now on there that will say that Trinidad and Tobago can benefit from an investment of X amount of dollars on the table now?
We're talking to one, we can't call the names in this forum, unfortunately, based in South, and through our efforts and introductions, basically they have 2 letters of interest of intent on the offer from international hotel chains wishing to establish their brand in a southern-based hotel.
Thank you.
Senator
Mark.
2 final questions.
Yes, sir.
I have the management letter from Deloitte and Touche, I think. Deloitte? Yeah, just Deloitte. Yeah. Could you tell us what has happened with your effort to have the Board of Inland Revenue waive your green fund levy and business levy outstanding for the period 2014 to 2016? Have you been successful in convincing the Board of Inland Revenue that those outstanding sums ought to be waived?
If I may start through the chair, and I'll ask the Minister of Finance and the answer to the question. We did write to the Board of Inland Revenue, and specifically in terms of the Green Fund levy, the response from an attorney at Inland Revenue basically suggested that the question did not arise, that InvesTT would be liable for Green Fund levy because the subventions from the government is not treated by them as income in the strict sense of the term, and we have no other source of revenue coming into the company. So they did not see it as being applicable. In terms of the business levy, if I may defer to the Manager of Finance.
When we wrote the Board of Inland Revenue, we just mentioned specifically the Green Fund levy. So we probably need to do the same thing again, this time raising the issue of the business levy, but the rules that apply to both the Green Fund, what the Green Fund and the business levy is to be calculated on a similar company income, right? And so we are hopeful that once we raise that a similar ruling will apply.
But, Mr. President, from what you have said, the Board of Inland Revenue has agreed to waive this amount for you, or have they told you that you have to pay? The company has to meet this obligation.
As I said, I don't want to overreach with what they said, but basically we got correspondence from their attorney which indicated that, in their opinion, it did not arise as a question of payment for the Green Fund levy because we do not have independent sources of income.
Okay. All right. The other point I'd like to raise here is this. Again, shares were issued during fiscal year 2015, but these shares were never recorded, which would have been in breach of Section 34 of the Companies Act. What have we done to rectify this?
If I may answer, Chair, basically it was a question of a check which was due from the Ministry of Finance for $9 to represent the increase in the share capital because the shares were increased without consideration, which is the breach that you refer to, but we've since received that check of $9. So that matter is now squared off.
My final question is simply this. And maybe the Permanent Secretary and your good self can share briefly, and you can put your thoughts in writing. Given the current reality facing InvesTT, what would you want to suggest to this committee that you would like us to consider to make this company more efficient, more effective, more autonomous, more stable in the future, because we would want to get from InvesTT and the ministry recommendations, considerations that you would like this committee to place on its agenda as we go forward. So I'd like to ask briefly, and then you can put pen to paper and communicate to the Secretariat on recommendations and considerations that you would like our committee to consider to make your company stronger, more stable, more autonomous, as the case may be, so that you can play your role as you see it to attract more investment to our shores and generate foreign exchange employment opportunities for our country. Can you briefly, in a few moments, both you and the Permanent Secretary, and later on, put pen to paper and submit your further thoughts to the Secretariat?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an aspect we probably do have to spend a little bit more time looking at in terms of the aspects you raised being more autonomous in particular. But in terms of more effective, and one must commend InvesTT for all the work that they have done to date, every member of the team. I think that where they can perhaps work more closely might be greater, because they're already doing it, but greater strategic focus. So that if, as was stated earlier by the President and the Chairman, that you're looking at 4 sectors, who in those 4 sectors, who in particular, how do you customize the pitch to that particular entity? And I think we have to be very mindful that our resources are not as they used to be. And so an even greater strategic approach really is, to my mind, at this point in time, core to moving forward.
President?
Thank you, Chair. There are just 2 points I'd like to highlight. One, I believe that a legislative framework for the agency may be of some value in terms of strengthening. It's doing away from the moral suasion and shifting towards, okay, this is the law of the land. You need to work with InvesTT to achieve these benefits for investors, or to have these applications processed in a timely manner. It's written in law. So I believe that will help. The funding remains an issue which needs to be solution to be found. I would like to say, though, through the support of the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance, we have reduced the payables. So our payables balance as of today, excluding the debt to ETEC and the PSIP debt. When I joined in May 2017, it was $1.7 million. It's now $20,000. And that has been through constant work and reporting and feedback and communication. So those are my 2 points, I do, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Mark. Thank you. Senator Deonaran has been waiting a little while now to ask some questions. And then we will wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Most of the questions were asked already, so I just have 2 more questions. In terms, I'm still thinking about the employment opportunities, and I'm wondering if InvesTT or the Ministry of Trade currently has any collaboration with Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development, and also private tertiary institutes, in terms of identifying the areas in which we have a shortage in skills that these FDI firms are coming in and searching for.
If I may start, PS, Madam PS, through the Chair, we do have actually those relationships ongoing. If I could start with NETCO, which falls under the Ministry of Labor, we have a working agreement with them in writing, so that when we have investors coming in FDI, or they may be large $100 million investments, but there's usually a spillover in the economy in terms of support services to service those investments. And we will channel those, we do channel those investment or labor opportunities through NETCO, so they could spread it to their micro entrepreneurs who they have in their data pool and could benefit from the new investments coming in. Specifically in the BPO space, we've had discussions with the Ministry of Education, with COSTAT, I know personally I was involved in particular, to ensure that the skills requirements of that particular sector are met and what sort of the training requirements would need to take place in order to service, let's say, someone coming in and they want to fill 500 seats and they want to ramp up to 1,500 seats in 2 years to make sure that the training pool is available so that there's no loss of, no interruption in service. So we can do more, I think. I agree with you. And it could be more streamlined, but we are making efforts where we can in those areas.
Thank you. Could you tell me at the top of your head maybe about 5 skills that we currently have a shortage of or a lack of, based on your interaction with these firms and the types of labor that they are looking for?
The number one is software development. Because what happened, the education system, we graduate a certain number of computer grads. So they have technical degrees, but a lot of them cannot do the jobs that are required of the international tech companies. So that's one of the initiatives which we are working with the Ministry of Trade to try and establish is a coding school, so that we could have our citizens enter this coding school, learn the particular software skills that are required, and have a high degree of confidence that when they graduate, it may be a 3-month, 6-month type program, they would move into jobs. So it's not learning for the sake of knowledge, but it's as a pathway to a career in working with an international software development firm. So these are some of the, that's the first one that strikes me at top of the list.
Okay, and what about in areas of artificial intelligence and so on?
Well, again, all these are new to Trinidad. One of the investments we closed in 2018 was in robotics. And we started off with, I think, 1 or 2 local student graduates from the University of the West Indies who are trained in that area. And I believe now they are up to 4. But that is an area, that's a gap that needs to be filled.
Okay.
If I may, sorry, through the chair, just to comment briefly on the IT sector, the last figure I saw was 400 IT graduates a year. And 400 IT graduates a year, most companies would identify that as not being sufficient to really feed any type of software industry in any major way. And if you look at some of the activities being done abroad, the educators and the companies that are doing software development are brought to the same table, and it gives the companies an opportunity to tell the educators exactly what they need. These are the areas that we are developing. We need X amount of people, and they have to be proficient in these areas. So I think there has been some dialogue, and I think there's a lot more dialogue to come. Everybody wants to be in the IT space. It's a great space, and we all agree that's the future. But at some point, Trinidad and Tobago has to ramp up the graduates, the graduate level, many workshops. Sometimes it's not going to school for 4 years, getting a tertiary degree in software development. Sometimes it's a 6 or an 8-month program that's very, very intensive, that can gear up people very, very quickly in a particular area. So that is the way the world is going, away from these formal 4- and 5-year degrees. And I think we need to really study and ramp up in the education area around IT to be able to compete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Okay. I couldn't agree more with you. I'm looking at the Corporate Performance Report 2018-2019. This is for fiscal 2018-2019, right?
Yes, which we
right.
Correct.
Okay, I see one deliverable you have here is monthly investor satisfaction with InvesTT. Perhaps that is that a questionnaire?
That's a survey that is done at the end of the fiscal.
Yeah, perhaps you all have questions related to skills and employment opportunities and so on pertaining to the skills gap?
Yes,
Yeah?
very valid point, member.
Okay. consideration should be given to including that. And I also see that it's highlighted in red and it says scheduled for Q1 2019.
Correct.
Are we up to date with it?
Well, Q1 2019 is October this year, so.
Right.
Yes. So
okay.
it will be premature because what we do, we try to see what is the level of satisfaction at the end of each fiscal.
Okay. All right, great. The other area, now I know you all are also involved in the creative sector. How many firms do we have involved in the creative sector right now?
In terms of closed investments, I'm just scanning. We have 2 since 2014. So it's very limited.
Okay. Are you all, sorry, go ahead.
We have done some research. We have a sector profile. Some research was done in terms of a sound studio as being a viable option as an investment opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago. And that is one that we've been pitching through the investments team to international as well as diaspora investors in particular to try and make that happen.
Okay. Are you all familiar with Creative Industries Company Limited? Are you all collaborating with them?
Yes, we work closely with them.
All right. I just needed to make sure because they came before us in the same committee before.
Yes.
So I just had to make sure. My final question, Mr. Chair, is to the Ministry of Trade. Could you enlighten us on how far we are with the single electronic window? Because I believe this would bridge the gap with these foreign direct investment firms that are coming in through InvesTT.
Thank you very much, Member. I will ask Mr. Karim, who has specific responsibility for the SEW, to provide some details on that.
It's nice to get a second bite of the cherry. So we do have 46 e-services currently online on the single electronic window. The Ministry of Trade is currently implementing an IDB $25 million loan, which the member would be very familiar since you were instrumental at the bank in helping with the administrative aspects. We are going to roll out new e-services which will directly assist InvesTT in doing that very important investment facilitation role. One major one would be Develop TT under the Ministry of Planning and Development, which would, for the first time, automate all of the requirements for construction permitting in the country. Because one of the major investor-related services any foreign investor requires is a building permit. So in collaboration with the Ministry of Planning and Development, before the end of this fiscal, that is September the 30th, the Ministry of Planning will be rolling out that national platform so that we would have construction permitting online, the Water and Sewage Authority, plumbing and online approval for WASA approvals, TNTech online, and EMA processes online. But in addition, we are implementing, I know we mentioned customs, but we are trying to get customs to continuously improve their operations through a risk management system and, collaborating with the Port Authority to make the logistics process, which is a very difficult one to re-engineer, but we continue to do the automation of the services at the ports with customs, etc. The loan is going to be fully implemented by April 2021.
Oh, no, one more question. No, you alluded to some challenges with customs and the Port of Port of Spain, or the Port Authority, is that it?
Well, I think the Vice Chair alluded to, port operation and customs efficiency in Trinidad and Tobago has always been a very difficult one. So while the Ministry of Trade and Industry have been leading the efforts to automate e-services, members would appreciate that a lot of these issues are people-related issues. And to get that change management culture in some of our regulatory border agencies is a very challenging one. We can only do our best at the Ministry of Trade and Industry. InvesTT, unfortunately, is the recipient of how efficient we are, because to the extent that the ministry and the other line ministries are efficient, they can offer a superior investor facilitation service to their investor clientele. But we continue at the ministry to work with the respective agencies and ministries to do better.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karim. Well, members of InvesTT and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we have come to the end of today's examination of InvesTT. I would afford you the opportunity, if you so desire, to give a short concluding statement. At first, we'd start with Permanent Secretary, you, and then to the Chairman or the President of InvesTT.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair, and simply to say that the Ministry of Trade and Industry really appreciates the discussions this morning, the deliberations, the very useful recommendations, suggestions coming out, ranging from having a consultant's report sent to the members on the branding operations that we're looking at. Minister Hines stressed the importance of oversight. There was also the need to look at the labor and skills, transfer skills, no skills mismatches, as the Senator specified. And we do take on board that the value of having handbooks at our respective overseas missions that could move forward the work of InvesTT. And the internal audit, Mr. Chairman, is not lost at all on the Ministry of Trade and Industry, something that we continue to pursue. And so for all the very many useful recommendations, we are appreciative, and we look forward to continuing to work with our colleagues at the Ministry, at the agency, InvesTT, and of course our colleagues at the Ministry of Finance in moving forward. And we thank you for the opportunity this morning.
Thank you. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to thank the Chairman and the committee for this event today. I think these suggestions are fantastic suggestions. It's always good to get a perspective as to your activities and how they're perceived, and suggestions in how you can really do your job better. And I really believe at the end of the day, we are all aligned. We all have the same goal as citizens of this country, to improve our economic status, grow our GDP outside of the petrochemical area. And I really would like to thank you for today, and we will take on board all of your suggestions and do an introspective look to see what we can do to be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Investment Division of Ministry of Finance.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity for concluding remarks. Well, the conversation was very interesting. It brought to light some issues, one or two issues that we probably need to clarify with the Ministry and InvesTT a little deeper. And we thank you for inviting us, and we look forward to working with the committee in future consultations. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's left for me now to thank each and every one of you for being an active participant of today's examination into InvesTT, the Investment Division, Ministry of Finance, InvesTT, the Chairman, the President, and the team members, and of course the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry, and her team, and of course my committee members, or our committee members, and members of the media. Thank you very much. The meeting is now suspended. Thank you.